Red blood cell counts, or RBCCs, range in humans, one group, 4.6 million to 6.2 million red blood cells per cubic millimeter of blood. Another group is 4.2 to 5.4 million per cubic millimeter, and the third group is 4.5 to 5.1 million. Now, can you guess what the groups are? If you said the top group, on average, the most concentrated with red blood cells, that's going to be in males. The lowest concentration is going to be in females. And the third category is actually in children. Children, because they need a lot of red blood cells in order to provide a lot of oxygen to get energy, of course, for growing. Males need a lot more because of the skeletal muscle for doing work. Females, remember, have more soft tissues than hard tissues such as muscle, and so they do not require, especially a lot of adipose tissue on average, no offense, but does not require as much energy to maintain it. It is stored energy. From the amount of hemoglobin, heme, iron, we can measure all those. The most important thing is to measure is the iron. Iron directly carries the oxygen. You can have enough red blood cells, enough hemoglobin, enough heme groups, but if you don't have enough iron, and of course it has to be carried on all those, you don't have enough what we call oxygen carrying capacity. And so that's what they usually measure when you go in and they want to determine, of course, if you're anemic or not. Production of red blood cells is a little bit difficult. We'll summarize it here. And that hemocytoblast, remember, blast means embryonic, in other words, reproductive cell, it's still dividing. Hemo for blood, cell, cyto for cell. That will switch or become an erythroblast, which means it's still a progenitor cell, still developing. But it's more like a red blood cell, but still able to divide, still has a nucleus. And of course, once it loses a nucleus now, it is an erythrocyte. Average lifespan, as I mentioned before, 120 days, and then it's damaged by wear and tear, especially blood pressure, banging up against blood vessels, and also, of course, going through the heart and the valves and such in the heart. Control of the production of those red blood cells is negative feedback, monitored by a minor hormone called erythropoietin. This is one that was not on your list in AP1. It's released due to low oxygen in the kidneys, and there's a backup also in the liver. Now, near Dallas, the altitude here, the elevation is about 580 feet, if I remember correctly. Of course, if you're down at the Gulf, standing, wiggling your toes in the edge of the water in the Gulf of Mexico, that's at sea level. And because of the attraction of the Earth to the air above us, the air is the most dense there. And because of that, there's low altitude, you have a greater amount of oxygen being pulled towards the Earth, and so you don't need as much erythropoietin because you don't need as many red blood cells. For those that you have, they gather all the oxygen you need and deliver it to the tissues, and you're fine. Now, if you go and live at a high altitude, the air is what we call thinner there. In other words, there's not as much, and that means there's not as much oxygen. To compensate, your body will release more erythropoietin, which causes your red bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. This helps you capture a little bit of oxygen that's in the air, and of course deliver it to the muscles that need it and other tissues. Normally, this is not much of a problem. If you would walk from Galveston up to the mountains in Colorado, as you slowly progress day by day at higher elevations, your body would adjust. However, modern technology allows us to do this a lot faster these days. So if you especially jump on a plane and you can go from Galveston up to Colorado in just a couple of hours, your body cannot adjust that quickly. So people that go up for weekend trips, they come back and, I don't know, I felt kind of sick, run down, feeling better now that I got back. It takes about 5 to 7 days to actually adjust. And because of this, this makes it especially important, not only vacationing. I mean, if people go up for a week, first couple of days they don't feel well, they just kind of sit around. After a couple of days they start moving around a lot more. Just at the end of the week, now they start skiing or hiking and they feel a lot better, they feel energized, and they come back and they tell you how such a great last few days and they wish they didn't have to leave, they really enjoyed it. But now they're back. That's why we take vacations. They feel so energized. And it's not because of that at all. It's simply because of oxygen. Now they have a high amount of oxygen. They started with a small amount being carried by the few red blood cells they had in the body, and it increased over time, and so they adapted to the environment. And now that they flew back, now they're in a lot more oxygen rich environment, and they have all these red blood cells to capture all that oxygen, and basically they're on sort of a natural high of oxygen, and that'll disappear after about a week, and then they can't wait to have their next vacation. This makes especially a big difference in the Olympics. Our Olympic training grounds are in Colorado, and for a good reason. It's great for training. And the Olympics are held usually near sea level, like Sydney and China. Usually in the Olympics they show you a view of water. London, the Thames River. Even Athens, you look off a cliff, but there's the Mediterranean Sea. Even Atlanta, Georgia, you couldn't see water from there, but actually Atlanta is only 25 feet above sea level, even though 200 miles inland. It is a very low elevation. Athletes used to go 2-3 weeks ahead of time and tour and party and everything before the Olympics. They don't do that anymore. They know better. What they do now is they'll wait until the opening ceremony, or some athletes skip that and come the next morning, first day of the Olympics. They want to keep that advantage. They want to keep all that oxygen, all those red blood cells packaged inside their bodies. And you'll see how, like one year, Joyner, she was in 5 different events. Usually people usually did one event. Now people oftentimes do multiple events. And it gives them an advantage because the more red blood cells they have built up, of course, the faster their muscles can recharge with oxygen and the longer they can keep going. So a lot of times they go over one qualifier and then 20 minutes later they have another qualifier. And so they can recharge. And Joyner, she got 3 gold medals at first, and then the 5th day now she gets a silver, and the 7th day she gets a bronze. And they said, how disappointing. Said, well, the effects started wearing off. And how disappointing. I mean, heck, I'd be happy with 1 bronze medal. I mean, much less 3 gold, a silver, and a bronze. And the commentator who made that stupid comment, I don't even think he had 1. But the other one is actually football. Mile High Stadium. Most other stadiums are below 1,000 feet of elevation, and that one's well above. And they know they have an advantage. And teams, as soon as they finish one game, if next week they have to play in Denver, they will pack up right after they shower from their one game, get on a flight, and fly up there in the first 2 days. Just walk around, tour, have fun, acclimate. Then they start light practices. Because back in the day, before they really understood about this, even after their Super Bowl victories, Elway retired, Terrell, all these other people retired or moved on, and yet they had no stars on the team, no really great players, yet they made the playoffs the next year. They were picked to be the bottom of the division, and yet here they came in second division, they had a winning home record. Well, of course, simply because of the oxygen advantage. They would lose the first half the game when the other team was fresh. Come out the second half, though, and their team was used to playing in that elevation, so they did just as well in the second half, and the other team is winded. So what happens when their quarterback's a little winded, the lineman, the wide receiver, the running back's a little bit winded? They would come back from 14, 21-point deficits. John Elway even was known as a comeback kid because of how many fourth quarter turnaround wins he had. Come from behind. And that's exactly why. And in fact, so much of an advantage that years later, when they built this new stadium, one of the teams, I think it was Pittsburgh, actually put in a request in the NFL commission. Every team has a representative on this committee, and said Denver needs to build their new stadium not above the city. You always see a view from the stadium to the city down below and how beautiful Denver looks at night. Said, no, Denver's in the middle. They should build it below the city, which they could. There was land there. They could have done that. And for anything to pass, they have to have a unanimous agreement. One team did not agree, and that was Denver, because they knew the advantage that they had. So they actually voted against it. Now, they did agree that they would build it at a lower elevation. They did, and my understanding is, about 100 feet below the old stadium. So after, maybe 1,000 stadiums, it'll be, low enough. Yeah, maybe 300. Destruction of the red blood cells. They are devoured up by macrophages in the spleen and also the liver. That's one reason why you have your spleen removed. The liver can take over its function. The globin, those are proteins, so they're just disassembled. They can be reassembled into new proteins, new globin, or anything else. If anything is damaged, you try to burn. Anything you can't burn, that's waste, and you dump it. The heme gets changed into biliverdin, which has a kind of greenish color to it, and then that'll be changed to bilirubin, which has an orangish red color, and that gets dumped in the bile and exits the body. Dietary factors that make a difference in red blood cell production. Of course, anything that causes cells to reproduce, such as vitamin C. Talk about that for mitosis. Also vitamin B12 for energy production. You need that, of course, for cell reproduction, and also folic acid. And, of course, you need iron in your diet for carrying oxygen.